Chapter 6. Millie didn't have a nice, cozy sleep whatsoever. It felt like her worries had followed her into her dreams, and that's all she could think about. Then the lights flashed to life, and just like that, a new day in the frozen hell had begun. Gorge gave the same, "Oh, for fuck's sake," morning grumble. Millie thought that might have been the way he usually wakes up in general if he was back home. The thought amused Millie. Gorge, on the other hand, was not amused. He was in a dark mood. You all right, Gorge? Her amusement had turned into an unsettling concern as Gorge jumped down from his bunk. Yeah, I'm all right. Boy, was that convincing, Millie thought, but didn't push it. Their neighbor, Omar, had already disappeared. They found him with the others of the core group. Omar and Kristen seemed in good spirits. Amon was always tough to read, but he seemed to be doing fine. Sly, on the other hand, seemed out of it. He still seemed troubled, but, of course, with the current environment, who could blame him? He probably had the same kind of sleep Millie had, troubled and unfilling. There was also a new face in the group, a boy around maybe a year or two younger than Millie. She realized this was the same kid that was giving her a strange look with his green eyes on the first day. The kid had disheveled brown hair and freckled olive skin. He didn't say anything, but still gave her that weird look. The group went through the morning with the idle chit-chat. Sly and Gorge were a bit distant with these talks. The breakfast they had was uneventful, some stale bread and soup. Millie couldn't help but miss the taste of a fresh red apple. Her mother had made the best apple pies. Just like that, she was lost in the memories of the past. Most of the group's good cheer quickly died when Malcolm approached them. "Seems like morale is a bit low at this table," he noted. "Care to change that by bringing good news?" Sly asked. Malcolm tugged at his collar nervously. "Most likely not, unless you were a fan of yesterday." The table in unison slowly shook their heads. "Sometime this afternoon," Gorge muttered. More like 10 o'clock. Malcolm gave a slight shrug. He wasn't too thrilled, which at least Sly could appreciate. 10? There was no appreciation in Kristen's voice. "Isn't that in an hour?" "A bit less than that," Malcolm admitted, and quickly left, seeming to not be able to stomach the guilt. "How is that guy a soldier?" Gorge questioned. "What?" Millie asked, snapping out of the past. Gorge looked at her curiously. "Are you on planet Novus, Binky?" "What happened?" "Another match," Amon stated, and a bit more dread filled Millie, which she thought wasn't possible. It took no time at all for the team of 6 to arrive at their locker room to prepare for the coming match. There was a different aura this time around. They had a better idea of what to expect, but everyone was more uneasy. "So we don't know anything? Not if the terrain is the same or who we're fighting?" Kristen asked. Gorge shrugged. "Pretty much. Same as last time." "The question is, do we come up with a different strategy?" Amon asked, turning to Sly. "How the hell did I get stuck with this?" Sly muttered in thought. Realizing all eyes were on him, he snapped out of it. "In theory, I don't think there was anything truly wrong with the plan." "No?" Kristen objected. "I'm not too sure that's true," Gorge added. "One, we flat out lost," Kristen continued. "Flat out may be too harsh," Sly countered. "We lost to a fucking duel," Gorge shot back. "Of honor," Sly quickly responded. "That didn't quite help our reputation, boss," Omar chimed in. "I'm no strategist." "But you do have the brain power for one, and that's half the battle," Amon noted encouragingly. "Debatable," Gorge stated. "I think the middle approach needs work," Kristen suggested. "You said you'd take middle so it would be easier for you to change plans on the fly, but I don't think you did that once." "It's a bit tough when I don't have a way to communicate with the team," Sly countered. "It's not like I have a bugle or anything." "Wouldn't your sax fix that problem?" Millie whispered. There was a moment of silence, then Amon said, "There is merit to that." "I guess that's something to ponder for next time, since I don't have it," Sly said flatly, but smiled at Millie. "Thanks, though. Any kind of feedback is helpful." Millie nodded, feeling a bit of a fool since the instrument wasn't with them. In a sense, feeling as her idea was a moot point. "So, I'm hearing we're taking a slower approach," Gorge suggested. "Our standard plan will be spreading out our team more evenly and taking positions at the midpoint," Sly explained. "Most likely we'll exchange fire, lower the enemy numbers, and then push forward to their leader." "Depending on the layout of the arena," Kristen said. Sly threw up his hands. Plans subjected to change. The doctor never showed up on the screen this time. The doors just opened suddenly to the arena and the team shuffled out. The arena had the same feel to it, although the crates were stacked in different shapes, creating different paths. This may have been one of the first matches of the day. There were very few people in the audience watching them, even though that didn't make a difference last time. The snowfall was light this time around. "Hello there, ladies and gentlemen," a loudspeaker throughout the arena played. "The fantastic Dr. Glad here to announce the next, first groups. We have groups 4 and 6 here on this fine hour. Now, we all know how this works by now, so we will just get to the point of the 5-minute discussion before the match. Please, do not leave your starting area until the match starts. Toodles!" And the loudspeakers switched off. "Is he saying goodbye a different way every time?" Omar asked curiously. Sure, kid," Gorge replied, not giving it much thought. "Team 4, Kristen mused. "Know who that is, Sly?" "Yeah, it will be the name of Penny's squad," Sly answered. "We didn't see her match play out, did we?" "Nope, but she saw our match play out." "Good thing we aren't sticking to that strategy," Gorge said with a bit of relief. "It's a modified version," Sly corrected. Gorge shrugged. "Sure, but aren't we fighting a literal child?" Kristen rose a brow, but Sly nodded. "Younger than anyone on our squad, that much is certain," Sly said. "Seriously?" Kristen asked. "Did she win?" "No idea," Sly replied. Kristen looked around, but everyone shrugged with uncertainty. "Anyways, we'll stick to what we talked about in the locker room. Although, we should utilize that tower." Sly pointed to a tower that was in the middle of their side. The tower was 40 feet tall with a ladder to the side facing them. "With the amount of crates and choke points and shit, I don't think it has too many great lines of sight," Gorge noted. "But still has value," Sly noted and turned to his middle squad. He shrugged. "Any volunteers?" No one initially stepped forward. Sly nodded experimentally. "Then Omar and Millie will take the tower." "What?" Millie protested. "Cool!" Omar leapt with joy. Gorge sighed. "And why is that?" "It gives them a good, stationary spot. Not too much stress, but they can still do some good work up there while getting some practice shooting while not receiving heavy fire," Sly explained. It seemed sound for Millie, although she wasn't too keen on climbing that tower. Gorge didn't have any objections, so he just shrugged. Sly told Omar to switch guns with one of the other members. Omar now had a semi-auto rifle for more accuracy at range. Sly assured Millie that her choice of weapon would be fine in the tower. The buzzer went off and the match began. Gorge patted Millie on the shoulder. "Try not to break anything, Pinky." He grinned at her and left for his side. Her wounded rib was actually healing up quite nicely, she thought. The pack was still in place, and she hardly noticed it all day. Omar and Millie followed Sly's squad up until the tower. Sly moved on ahead, leaving Millie and Omar to scale the tower. She looked up the ladder with dread. "This sucks," she muttered. "Oh, come on. Didn't you go up into a treehouse as a kid?" Omar asked. "I grew up in the plains, so no," Millie answered. "Besides, when would you build a treehouse this high? Did you grow up in the jungles of the West?" "Well, no," Omar admitted a bit defeatedly. "All I'm saying is it's not that big of a deal." Millie let out a puff of air in annoyance. "You want to go first? I can catch you if you fall," Omar suggested. Millie rolled her eyes. "As if," she shouted. "You go." Omar shrugged in defeat. "Okay, but don't fall too far behind and leave me hanging." Millie shooed Omar forward. "Let's just get this over with," she muttered. She followed Omar up the ladder. She took her time going up, but felt annoyed that Omar was matching her pace. "You know you don't have to slow down for me. It doesn't make me feel any better." Millie could only assume Omar replied with what looked like a shrug, and climbed the rest of the ladder with no issue. It took Millie another minute to join him. "Already out of breath?" was the first thing Omar said when Millie reached the top. With the high climb mixed with the fear, yeah, she was mentally exhausted. They were crouched behind the cover of the top tower. The roof shielded them from the light snowfall. "So now we just pluck off the bad guys one by one from up here," Omar said as he was about to get up and look over the tower. Millie immediately grabbed Omar's shoulder and pulled him back down, because Millie felt a bullet whiz past just a couple inches above them. The top of Omar's head had probably been visible. "Wouldn't there be a tower parallel to us on the opposing side?" Millie scolded him. "And wouldn't there be people already in that tower watching us?" Clearly someone was already firing a shot or two at them. A few seconds later, the fight below started as well. It's not my fault they got up here before us, Omar replied, staring accusingly at her. Millie glared back. This isn't a game, you know. Omar disagreed. It kind of is, though. It's a sport, and you don't die when you get shot. There is some risk of getting hurt, but that doesn't make this any less fun. Fun. That's the last word Millie would use to describe any of this. She sighed. Well, it wouldn't be fun to get out so early in the game, she noted in a way to try to reason with him. Omar nodded in agreement. Then do you have any ideas for the guys across from us? Can you peek and see how much is over there? Millie asked. So I'm the target? Omar asked with a bit of regret, and Millie nodded encouragingly. Omar was quick. He popped up for less than a second and no one took a shot. 3. 1 in the middle, 1 left, 1 right. And it's just the center guy watching us? Millie asked, and Omar nodded. Millie unslung her rifle and loaded a ball into the slot. Didn't you break your ribs last time you did this? Omar remarked as he loaded his own rifle. Millie rolled her eyes and ignored him. Just peek for a bit longer you're taking a shot, then I'll pop up and get him. Omar looked at her incredulously. How is this gonna work? He might only think there's one person in this tower, Millie told him. We can take him by surprise. I'm not sure this... Just do it. Omar took a moment to collect himself, then he quickly rose out of the cover. He didn't have time to pull off a shot before he almost got shot himself. He quickly got back down. This exchange gave Millie the time to peer over the cover and take a shot. She was able to control the recoil this time, although it didn't make her hands feel the best. The shot, on the other hand, was definitely off her mark. The ball hit one of the supports for the opposing tower's roof and the ball exploded. The shrapnel collided with the middleman's face and he collapsed. Omar, Millie yelled, and he started to take shots on the tower. He hit the man on the left pretty easily. The man on the right focused his attention on Omar and fired a shot. It missed, but Omar's second shot landed. The tower was down. You're actually a good shot, Millie noted with a bit of amazement. We might be the same age, but that doesn't mean we are the same when it comes to shooting. Omar smirked, and Millie just rolled her eyes. The battle lines at the bottom remained the same throughout that exchange. Neither team was taking any unnecessary risks. I guess now we have to be the heroes and change this fight for the better, Omar said with glee. Millie nodded and loaded some more balls in the slot. They started taking shots at the enemies below. The shooting was still incredibly awkward for Millie. She was pretty sure she didn't land a single of her 5 shots before the enemy started to fall back. All she was awarded was a bit of pain in her right wrist. Come on, Omar exclaimed. Let's get down there and join the action. I'm definitely content with just sitting up here until the fighting's over, Millie countered. Well, I'm sure you're definitely staying up here by yourself, Omar stammered as he got to the ladder. Millie sighed and followed him down. She was almost certain that she took 4 times as long to get to the bottom than Omar, but was pleasantly surprised to see him waiting for her. He waved her forward and they went sprinting down the middle towards the enemy side. They met up with some wounded as soon as they crossed the enemy line. Millie and Omar were told that the fight was going well, and that the plan was to box the enemy in on all 3 sides. The enemy was slowly being pushed back. Millie and Omar continued down the middle. The two approached the front line and saw Gorge, Sly, and 2 others. Sly and Gorge were in a conversation, while the other 2 were exchanging gunfire with the enemy. I'm not one to beat the shit out of a kid, Gorge was saying as Omar and Millie approached. The outcome of this fight is clear. If we tell them to surrender, they will. And yet, when I get challenged by a fellow leader to a duel, I'm the villain, Sly said in mock hysteria. Different situation entirely, Gorge countered. What are you doing on this side, sir? Omar asked Gorge, cutting into the conversation. Good to see you 2, Sly greeted. The right side can handle the situation without me, Gorge answered Omar. Sirs, one of the 2 individuals said, the fire has stopped on the enemy side. Gorge nodded. Let's just stick with the plan. I'm sure the 8-year-old will listen to reason. He pointed at Sly. You just stay here so we don't get another magical loss on our hands. Sly threw up his hands in defeat. Okay. Gorge moved out of cover and approached the enemy. A very pale-skinned, dirty, gray-haired girl came out of the open with a black teddy bear in her hand. She plumped down on the snow 15 feet away from Gorge. This was the 8-year-old leader, Penny. I'm sure we can be very reasonable with this, Gorge began. Penny tilted her head to one side, not responding. Surrender. Mr. Snuffles doesn't like that, Penny said in a monotone voice. Mr. Snuffles says you're a very bad man. Gorge rose a brow, not the response he was expecting. That doesn't. Penny weakly coughed once, and Gorge never finished what he was going to say. A second later, he fell back like a skyscraper and slammed into the ground. Gorge? Millie cried as she tried to step out of the cover, instinctively trying to go to his aid. Everything happened in an instant. The gunfire started and Penny was on the move. That move was heading straight for Millie. Millie's thoughts were focused on Gorge, and she didn't see Penny throw a blade at her. The blade hit its mark, embedding itself into Millie's calf. Millie staggered 2 steps back in shock and fell backwards. Penny leapt into the air, a blade in one hand, her teddy bear in another, going for the finishing blow on Millie. Amon came sprinting onto the scene with lightning speed. He took 2 bullets of enemy fire as he approached, but that didn't stop him from body-checking Penny as she was still in midair. Penny flew and cracked her shoulder on the cover that Millie had hid behind moments ago. The collision sent Penny rolling over the cover, dropping the blade and the bear. She landed face first in the snow. Not needing an invitation, Sly rolled near her and fired a shot into her back without hesitation. The alarm shrieked and the gunfire stopped instantly. This fight was over.